Okay, number nine. Number nine is a Sahabi who honestly, I am amazed does not get mentioned more often. It's actually very, very shocking to me. His name is Ubadah ibn al-Samit, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayh. Ubadah ibn al-Samit al-Khazraji, and he was called Ubadah ibn al-Samit al-Ansari al-Badri. Ubadah ibn al-Samit is yet another Ansari, and his titles, some people are commenting we've never heard of him, which is actually really unfortunate. Ubadah ibn al-Samit is basically famous for two things. Ubadah, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayh, is famous for being a outstanding warrior who partook in a ridiculous number of battles during the time of Rasulullah and after the time of Rasulullah, and I will detail some of them in a bit. The other thing that he was known for is that he was basically a jurist. He was basically a qali. And this is something really unusual among the Sahaba. This is something that makes him stand out. So, like, for example, Khalid ibn al-Walid is well known for having taken part in the conquest movement. But Khalid ibn al-Walid doesn't really narrate matters of fiqh. He's not stopping by the road to try to convert people to Islam. Ubadah ibn al-Samit has the distinction of being not only an outstanding warrior and a mujahid who participated in the conquest movement, but he was also a qadi. He was also a judge who handed down multiple rulings and whose ahadith are actually very, very important to the development of Islamic law. So Ubadah Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayh is an Ansari. He's from Medina, like Ubay ibn Ka'b. And he was also one of the first people to give bay'ah to Rasulullah at Aqaba and to, urge him to come to Medina. Ubadah participated in every single battle that the Prophet fought in. So starting with Badr, he used to be called al-Badri, because for the early Sahaba, if you were a veteran at Badr, that was a very, very big deal. That was like a badge of honor. So, I was at Badr. I was at the first ghazwa of the where we fought the mushrikeen. So Ubadah ibn al-Samit was there. He fought against the mushrikeen. And his physical appearance is actually something that comes up a lot when you're studying his biography and his military campaigns. He was said to be a very large man, very, very well built. He also seems to be of African origin because he's described as having very, very dark skin. But he was also said to be very, very handsome. So whenever he would go into battle, his enemies would be in awe of just the way he looked, because he just looked like this, perfect knight almost. And so he participated in all of the battles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And after Rasulullah's death, he played a very, very important part in the conquest movement. So he was dispatched along with the army of, the armies that went into the Levant, so Bilad al-Sham. So he fought in all of the major battles of the Levant, like in Najdain and the Ma'arakat al-Yarmouk, the Battle of Yarmouk, that ultimately led to the conquest of Syria. And he besieged numerous Byzantine settlements, Caesarea was one. There was another one whose name I'm forgetting at the moment. But then after that, it's he literally, the army in Egypt under Amr ibn al-As, they sent a letter to the second Khalifa. They're like, dude, we need reinforcements. We can't, the settlements in Egypt, like Heliopolis and Alexandria, and it used to be called Babylon at the time, Babylon in Egypt. It was dude, we need reinforcements, send us some help. And so Ubadah immediately, right after wrapping up the conquest of the Levant, he was sent into Egypt, and he laid siege to all of the cities in Egypt. He took part in the conquest of Egypt as well as Bilad al-Sham. So after that, during the governorship of Muawiyah, he also took part in the conquest of the island of Cyprus. So the Muslims conquered Cyprus twice. They conquered it once, then they lost it, and then they conquered it again, and then they lost it again. So, but his conquest of Cyprus is very, very well known. And his wife actually is said to have, wherever her husband goes on his military campaign, she's right there alongside him. But during the conquest of Cyprus, unfortunately, she passed away. I think it was either due to an accident or due to disease. But anyway, Ubadah was not only a mujahid on the battlefield. So he basically, today, the people in the Muslim world that know him the most are probably Ahl al-Sham, people of Syria, especially in Palestine, which I'll get to in a bit. So when the conquest movement was over, Ubadah decided to settle down in, in Bilad al-Sham and to take up the role of a qadi, or a judge. And so while he was a judge, there was a few famous incidents that happened between him and Muawiyah. So one of the incidents, it said that, when he was visiting Damascus, he saw a train of camels and they were carrying basically like alcohol. They were carrying wine. So wineskins. And so he asked, like, who's this for? They're like, oh, it's for the Emir. And so Ubadah is like, oh, okay, hang on a second. So he took out his knife. He cut all of the skins open. And it's like, you can tell him I'm the one who did it. There's another famous incident where, like, after a raid, what Muawiyah did is he started selling some of the gold that was captured for more than its weight, which is basically a very fancy way of saying he took interest. So Ubadah, basically, he called out Muawiyah for this. He said, this is haram. We heard Rasulullah saying that you're not allowed to do this. And so Muawiyah told him, as for me, I see no harm in it. My ijtihad says it's fine. So Ubadah, he went to Medina and he complained to the second Khalifa. It's like, I tell your governor this, and he tells me, I tell him Rasulullah said this, and he tells me, well, I have no problem with it. I refuse to live in the same land as this person. So Omar wrote a letter to Muawiyah. He says, you have no imara over Ubadah ibn al-Samit. He gives out rulings as he sees fit. You have no authority over him. So Omar sent him back. He's like, I need more men like you in these newly conquered areas to basically teach people Islamic law. So I'm sending you back. So the final incident that I remember is when it's mentioned in Tarikh ibn Asakir, when Uthman becomes the Khalifa. Again, Ubadah just like refuses to stop speaking out as at what he sees as poor administration. So he is brought before Uthman, and they ask him, they say, why is it that you have an issue with the Khalifa's governor? He says, dude, I remember hearing Rasulullah say, there's going to come a time where there will be people telling you to do what you know is wrong, and then ignoring you when you tell them to do what they know is right. And I swear by Allah that Fulan, in Ibn Asakir's book, he writes Fulan is one of those people. And he was referring to Muawiyah. And so Ubadah ibn al-Samit is like that in that later portion of his life. It's like he participated in the conquest movement, but he also became a qadi, and he spoke out against numerous instances of where he basically saw Islamic law was not being implemented correctly. So he died at the age of, I believe it was the age of 72, and he's buried at Bayt al-Maqdis. His grave is very, very well known in Palestine. So he's considered like almost like a national hero for the Palestinian people. Stories about his epic deeds in combat during jihad are still told to this day. And Imam al-Rida salamullahi alayhi specifically mentions him as one of the loyal Sahaba who did not basically, betray the legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam after his death. And with regards to his ahadith, many of his ahadith form form a very important part of the Sunni corpus for Islamic law. So, for example, he has a famous hadith where he says, I heard the Prophet say, Salat is not acceptable unless Surah al-Fatiha is included. And so, based off of this hadith, the Sunni Muslims are like, yeah, you have to recite Surah al-Fatiha. The other surahs, you can recite anything else after that, but you have to have Surah al-Fatiha. And if I recall correctly, the final hadith he narrated when he was on his deathbed says, I feel that I'm going to pass away soon, so I would like to narrate something for you. He says, I remember Rasulullah saying, whoever accepts La ilaha illallah and Muhammadun Rasulullah, the hellfire shall not touch him. So Ubadah ibn al-Samit, the warrior and the judge, I included him on the list. And I'm pretty sure most people here don't know about him. I think it's actually kind of insane how a man who basically accomplished this much is all but forgotten.